Hi, and welcome to your first lecture video for Anatomy and Physiology 1. How I have this hybrid course set up is each chapter will consist of several mini lecture videos on a playlist posted with the link posted to Canvas, where I'm giving you basically the same lecture I would give to my face-to-face classes. So we're going to start with chapter 1, where we're just going to introduce anatomy and physiology, go through some series of terms, and things like that. So, what is anatomy versus physiology? So, anatomy is going to be basically the study of the structure of the body parts and their relationships to one another. So, when we talk about this course being anatomy and physiology, we typically do the anatomy portion. Our primary focus is going to be on anatomy in the lab section. When we talk about physiology or the function of how the body and the organ systems work, that's what we're going to be working on in lecture. And we're going to focus on things occurring at the cellular or the molecular level when we talk about physiology. So anatomy is a pretty broad subject. So it has several subdivisions, and then each of these subdivisions are even further broken down into other divisions. But when we're talking about major subdivisions of anatomy, our first major subdivision is gross or macroscopic anatomy. And that's just going to be things that we can see basically that are visible to our naked eye. So we have three types of gross anatomy: regional anatomy, where all the structures in a particular area of the body. So, for example, if we're talking about all the muscles in our body or all the bones, something like that, that would be regional. If we're talking about systemic anatomy, we're talking about one system. So, like for example, your cardiovascular system or your integumentary system. And this is actually how your textbook is broken up, is by different systems. And we'll cover, I can't remember exactly how many, but maybe like 5 of the organ systems in A&P1. And then when you hit A&P2, you'll cover the remaining organ systems. There's also surface anatomy, and that's just going to be your internal structures as they relate to overlying skin. So, where we can see our muscles protruding from underneath our skin, something like that would be surface anatomy, or veins, vein identification as well. So the other major subdivision would be microscopic anatomy, and that would be studying things that you cannot see with the naked eye. So, for example, cytology. If you've had medical terminology, you know that cyto means cells. So cytology would be the microscopic study of cells, or histology. That would be the microscopic study of tissues. So histo means tissues. Your entire second lab exam is going to be on histology. We're going to be going in and looking at the 4 general tissue types, as well as specific types that fall within those general categories. The third major subdivision of anatomy is developmental anatomy. Again, we're not focusing on that in A&P1, however, you will focus on it on A&P2, and that's where you're basically going to look at the development, both anatomically and physiologically, throughout the life. One specific division, if we're talking about prior to birth, would be embryology. Okay, so we did talk about anatomy, which is going to be the structure, and physiology, which is pretty much the function. And even though anatomy and physiology are distinct from one another, they're also inseparable, because function is always going to reflect the structure. So, for example, your textbook gives you here where you can see these teeth, which are called incisors. These teeth are shaped very differently from, say, your molars back here, because their shape is going to dictate their function. So your incisors, those are shaped pretty sharply, which makes them good for cutting or biting. Whereas our molars are much flatter in their structure, which makes them better for grinding. So again, that's just the complementary of structure and function, basically telling you that anatomy and physiology go hand in hand. And that's it for the first